They say my name like I was just a mistake, a moment in someone else's downfall. But they never asked me how it felt to be taken, not chosen. I wasn't a woman trying to seduce a king, I was a wife, bathing in silence. The night was warm, the stars quiet, and I had no idea that my life would split in two. One moment I was living in peace, and the next, I was inside a palace I never asked to enter. He was the king, and I was a woman with no voice in that world. I didn't walk through the doors with power, I was summoned. People love to write stories about women like me, but they never ask for our version. They forget that behind every headline, there are eyes filled with fear. I wasn't seen as a human. I was an object in someone else's decision. My name became a whisper, then a rumor, then a warning. But before all that, I was just Bathsheba, a daughter, a lover. And everything changed when the silence around me got louder than the truth inside me. This is not the story they told you. This is the story I carry. And maybe, just maybe, it sounds a little like yours too. He looked at me from his rooftop like I was a painting he owned. But I wasn't created for that gaze. I was created to be whole. The palace was beautiful, but nothing in it made me feel safe. I lost something that night, and no one ever asked what it cost me. When I found out I was pregnant, fear sat heavier than shame. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe without guilt choking me. I had become a secret too heavy to carry alone. And then, Uriah. My husband. My heart. He never came home again. And I never stopped blaming myself. Even though I didn't kill him. I felt like I had. Like somehow, just by being caught in the fire, I had lit the match. And the child, my child, didn't survive. There's a kind of grief that sinks deeper than words. It doesn't cry, it just lingers like fog in your lungs. And I walked with that fog for years. I watched the world move on while I stayed broken. I wore royal robes, but inside I was hollow. People bowed when I walked by, but they never looked in my eyes. Because if they had, they would have seen it, the storm. Grief wrapped itself around me like silk. Crushing. Sometimes I wanted to scream, but there was no space for screaming here. Not in the palace. Not in this skin. I became a queen on the outside. And a ghost inside my own chest. I wondered if God still saw me. If he still wanted me. Because I didn't even want myself anymore. Shame became my shadow. Always close, always watching. And I began to believe the lies. I'm ruined. I'm replaceable. But then, something changed. And it didn't come like thunder. It came like whisper. One night, I sat alone in my room, crying into silence. And I felt something, no, someone, near. Not David. Not a servant. Not a priest. It was God. Not judging. Not scolding. Just present. As if he had been there the whole time, waiting for me to notice. He didn't speak words, but I felt the message. I saw everything. Not just the fall, not just the loss, but me. The girl I used to be, the woman I had become. He didn't turn his face away like people did. He looked straight into my pain and stayed. And in that stillness, I knew, I was not forgotten. I was not dirty. I was not discarded. I was still his. Even with all the broken pieces. That moment didn't fix everything, but it started something. I stopped hiding from God, and slowly, I stopped hiding from myself. I began to write again, to sing, to remember who I was before the pain. I wasn't just the scandal. I was the survivor. And one day, Solomon was born. His name means peace, and peace didn't come easy. It came through labor. Through blood. Through breath. He was my redemption, not because he fixed me, but because he reminded me that God still trusted me to bring something beautiful into the world. Not just any child, but the heir. The one who would wear the crown. Me. The girl no one defended. The woman everyone blamed. I became the mother of wisdom. That still stuns me. Because only God could write a story like that. Where ashes become thrones. I still carry grief. I still remember what I lost. But now I know I'm more than what happened to me. I'm more than the labels they gave me. I'm more than a woman in a king's shadow. I am a voice, a vessel, a queen not made by man, but restored by God. And so are you. If you've ever been used, unseen, or mislabeled, let me tell you, you are not what they did to you. You are not the story others chose to write. You are a daughter of the King. Your pain is not wasted. Your silence is not empty. Your tears are seen. And your healing is real. Even if it takes time. Sometimes healing looks like standing up when your legs shake. Sometimes it's speaking your truth when your voice cracks. Sometimes it's sitting still and letting God hold you without saying a word. That's what I did. And little by little, I came back to life. I started looking in the mirror again, not just to see my reflection, but to meet myself with compassion. I stopped being angry at the girl who didn't fight back. She did the best she could with what she had. And I started to bless her. To say, you made it. You survived. You're still here. That's enough for today. Sometimes surviving is holy. Sometimes surviving is worship. If your story feels too messy for redemption, I'm here to tell you, it's not. God doesn't avoid the broken. He builds with it. He steps into the middle of our worst chapters and says, watch me work. He didn't erase my past. He used it as soil. And from that soil, something sacred grew. You might not feel it now. But the same God who saw me sees you. He is not in a rush. He's not afraid of your mess. And he doesn't need perfect. Just open. So open your hands, even if they're trembling. Speak your truth, even if it shakes the room. Cry out, even if your voice is small. He hears you. He sees you. He's always seen you. And maybe you're not ready to believe that yet. That's okay. Just keep breathing. Keep waking up. Keep listening. Because the same God who gave me peace can do it again. He's not done with you. Not even close. If you've ever felt like your past disqualifies your purpose, remember me. If you've been silent for too long, remember me. If they've only ever told your story in pieces, take it back. You don't have to be ashamed of surviving. You don't have to be quiet about healing. You are allowed to rise. To rebuild. To reclaim joy. Even if the world still whispers. Let them whisper. You were never here to please them. You were made to walk with purpose. Crowned by grace. Seen by God. There were nights I couldn't sleep because silence screamed louder than any voice. Nights when I touched my stomach where my first child once grew. And I wondered if God still called me mother. I wondered if he regretted giving me life at all. But I was still here. And some days, survival was the miracle. Not the crown. Not the palace. Just breath. Just one more day. Grief doesn't follow rules. It doesn't punch in and out like work hours. It shows up on birthdays, in laughter, in worship songs. But God met me in those interruptions. Not with answers, but with presence. David and I, we didn't talk much at first. Too much guilt in the air, too many things unsaid. But slowly, painfully, we learned how to look at each other without flinching. He was broken too. Not just as a man or a king, but as someone who let his choices destroy lives. And I think we both needed forgiveness, not just from God, but from ourselves. There's something strange about healing in the same place that broke you. But that's what we did. It wasn't perfect, and some wounds left scars. But we learned how to speak gently. How to hold each other's pain like sacred glass. How to pray not as royalty, but as beggars at the same altar. That's when love started growing again. Not romance at first. But mercy. Solomon was different. From the beginning, I knew he carried more than blood. He carried promise. He laughed before he could walk. He asked questions no adult could answer. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. And sometimes I wondered, did God give him eyes to rewrite what mine had seen? He would touch my face and say, "Mama, why are your eyes always sad?" And I'd smile, kiss his hands, and say, "Because they've seen too much, my love." But then he'd rest his forehead on mine and whisper, "Then let me teach them joy." And somehow, he did. He was more than a child. He was restoration in human form. Proof that broken women still birth beautiful things. Proof that God doesn't skip over the fallen. I started writing again. Not for anyone to read, just for me. Little prayers, soft poems, pieces of truth I was too scared to say out loud. I wrote letters to the girl I used to be, and to the woman I was becoming, and sometimes, to the child I lost. No one told me how healing it would feel to give my pain a name, to stop pretending and start releasing. Those journals became my sacred space, my altar, my confession. It wasn't about being wise or eloquent. It was about being honest. Even if the ink was shaky, even if the page caught my tears. That was worship too. I want to talk to the woman who feels like she'll never be whole again, who hides her pain in productivity, in parenting, in pretending. I see you. You don't have to be strong all the time. You don't have to smile if your soul is tired. You don't have to carry your shame in silence. Your story still matters. Even the broken parts. Especially the broken parts. Because those are the places where God builds intimacy. Not performance. Presence. He's not watching you from a distance. He's right here. Closer than your next breath. You're not alone. You never were. I often wondered what people whispered about me at the market. If their eyes ever softened, or if they only saw scandal. But I stopped letting their perception write my purpose. Because God rewrote my name long before the gossip stopped. He called me loved. He called me mother. He called me chosen. And that was enough. I stopped waiting for the world's apology. I gave one to myself instead. I'm sorry you had to carry that alone. I'm sorry no one stood up for you. I'm sorry they made you feel unworthy. And then I said what God had been whispering all along. But you are worthy. Even in your weeping. Especially in your weeping. There's beauty in not getting what you expected. Because it forces you to find God where you didn't plan to. I never planned to be queen. Never planned to lose my child. Never planned to raise a king. But in all the unplanned pieces, I found purpose. And I found that God doesn't need perfect conditions to fulfill promises. He just needs a willing heart. Even a trembling one. Even a broken one. And that's what I gave him. Over and over. 1,000 shattered yeses. And he made mosaics from them. Things I never could have made alone. To the woman who feels invisible in her own story. This is your reminder. God sees in secret. He saw me on that rooftop, but he also saw me at night, crying into the dark. He saw me when I was used. He saw me when I blamed myself. He saw me when I couldn't forgive myself. And he didn't turn away. He didn't throw lightning. He just stayed. Stayed long enough for love to grow in the cracks. Stayed until shame started to soften. Stayed until I could see myself through his eyes. That's when healing began. Not when the pain disappeared. But when I stopped facing it alone. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman who lived. Not perfectly, but fully. A woman who knows what loss tastes like. And still chooses joy. Who knows what betrayal feels like. And still chooses love. Who knows what shame can do. And still chooses grace. I'm not defined by what was taken from me. I'm defined by the God who stayed. By the child who smiled. By the story that didn't end in sorrow. But was reborn in peace. If he did it for me, he can do it for you. So here I am, still Bathsheba. Not just the woman from the scandal. But the woman from the song. The woman from the crown. The woman from the lineage of Christ. Tell me God doesn't redeem. Tell me he doesn't choose the unlikely. Tell me he doesn't use broken women to build eternal things. I am proof. And so are you. If you're still breathing, God's not done. He still writes with tears. He still crowns with compassion. He still redeems what the world tries to erase. That's the kind of king we serve. There were nights I wondered if anyone would ever know the full truth. If they would see the whole picture, not just the rooftop, but the redemption. But maybe that's not my role. Maybe I was never meant to be understood by everyone. Only held by the one who knew my heart from the beginning. And that's enough. It's enough to be seen by God. To be known in the silence, to be loved in the ache. You don't have to explain your entire pain to be healed. Sometimes healing happens when you simply say, "Here I am, Lord." No fancy prayers. No royal robes. Just you, in your realest form. And God, in His gentlest. That's where freedom lives. Some mornings I still carry a quiet sorrow. Grief doesn't vanish, it just changes shape. But now I know it doesn't mean I failed. It means I loved. It means I was human. It means my heart was still soft enough to feel. And that is holy. I don't chase perfection anymore. I chase presence. The kind that meets me in small, sacred moments. Like my son's laughter. Like the way the sun touches my window in the morning. Like the way scripture whispers when no one else understands. God is in all of that. And it's enough. To the woman who thinks her past disqualifies her, let me hold your hand for a moment. You are not a mistake. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond restoration. The enemy would love for you to believe otherwise. But I've learned that God does His best work with what the world discards. He builds beauty from ashes. He writes lineage from loss. He plants kings in the wombs of women once called unclean. You don't need to earn love. You just need to receive it. Let grace be louder than guilt. Let mercy meet your memories. Let your name be rewritten by heaven. When Solomon became king, I stood behind him quietly, watching a boy carry a weight far heavier than gold. But he didn't carry it alone. Because he carried wisdom, and wisdom comes from fire. He saw my eyes. He knew my journey. And he ruled not with arrogance, but with awareness. That even the ones who fall can rise again. That even broken branches can bear divine fruit. That a throne means nothing if your heart forgets where it came from. I whispered prayers over him every night. Not just that he'd be great, but that he'd be kind. Kind to the hurting. Kind to himself. Kind to the God who gave us both a second chance. And now, when I walk the palace halls, I don't feel shame. I feel sacred. Not because I earned it, but because God redeemed it. These stones don't remember the scandal. They remember the silence that followed, and the God who spoke into it. I no longer walk in hiding. I walk in honor. Not the kind that man gives, but the kind God restores. My pain became my platform. Not to boast, but to bless. To whisper to other women, you're not alone. Your tears are seen. Your story is not over. And neither is mine. I often wonder, if my life were a song, what would the melody be? Maybe not loud, but layered. A soft hymn that rises slowly. A lullaby of redemption. A quiet anthem for the unseen. That's what I leave behind. Not just Solomon, but a legacy of grace. A reminder that your worth isn't defined by the worst chapter in your story. It's defined by the one who kept writing, even when you wanted to close the book. So if you're reading this now, if you're still here, know that your melody matters. And someone is listening. Dear sister, I know what it feels like to be reduced to one mistake. To feel like all anyone sees is your failure. But I also know what it's like to be rebuilt by God. To be called by name. To be given a seat at a table you thought you were disqualified from. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to breathe. And let grace catch you. Let God remind you, there is still oil in your lamp. There is still light in your future. There is still strength in your soul. Even if it's quiet. Even if it's trembling. It's still holy. If I could sit beside you now, I wouldn't preach. I'd just hold space. Sometimes the most sacred thing we can offer one another is presence. No fixing. No judging. Just being. Because healing doesn't always come in thunder. Sometimes it comes in whispers. In knowing someone else survived what you thought would destroy you. So this is me saying, I'm still here. Still breathing. Still believing. Still becoming. And so are you. Let's keep walking. God didn't ask me to be perfect. He asked me to be present. And when I finally surrendered the version of me I thought I had to be, He gave me the version I was always meant to become. Whole. Not because I was never broken, but because He never left. Every scar on my soul is a signature of grace. Every tear was a baptism. Every silence, a sanctuary. I don't regret the path. because it led me here, to this soft, sacred knowing that I am loved, and that love still has the final word. If this story spoke to your soul, don't rush away. Take a moment to breathe, to let it settle in your heart. And if you feel led, share it with someone who needs the same reminder that their past doesn't cancel their purpose, and their pain doesn't erase their promise. This is just one diary from behind the throne. But there are many more. And you are always welcome to return, to sit with these sacred voices, to remember that you, too, are part of God's royal redemption. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. But more than that, stay close to the God who sees. You're not forgotten. You are chosen.